Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, HollywoodShono here. Wanted to give you a HollywoodShono tech review. And this video is going to talk about the iPad Pro 12.9 inch for 2018 and the iPad Pro that is coming out and available within the next week or so, I believe March 25th. Now, I also own a Surface Pro 7, which we will be talking a little bit about as well. But the thing about the iPad Pro third generation is that it is running a A12X chip, and the new iPad Pro runs a A12Z. Now, if you're talking about speed between the iPad Pro and the iPhone 11, the iPad Pro is going to blow it out of the water. The other main difference between this iPad is the camera system is kind of like the iPhone 11. It has another camera. The front camera, however, remains unchanged. The USB-C cable remains unchanged at 1. And the new Magic Keyboard that is supposed to be supported is also going to work on the older generation iPad Pro. Now, there is 8 cores within the GPU versus 7 cores. And the Antutu benchmark is 712,218. Now, if you want to check out some other comparisons versus the iPad Pro, you can see the memory. Looks like there is a higher version at 10 gigs or 8 gigs. I believe the highest iPad Pro has 6 gigs. This could be a comparison between 4 and 6 gigs, which is the norm between all of them. You can see the UX benchmarks is basically the same. And the overall score of the CPU basically remains untouched, as the older model actually has a little bit better, probably because of the slower process. Now, one thing to keep in mind about the $300 Magic trackpad accessory, which looks like a way better Apple type cover, as the old one looks like crap. I'm talking about the iPad Pro. Your next computer is not a computer, it's a magical piece of glass. It's so fast most PC laptops can't catch up. It has pro cameras that can transform reality, and you can use it with touch, pencil, keyboard, and now trackpad. And the iPad Pro will be available starting March 25th, with the Magic Keyboard coming in May, as they probably have to work on mass production. But as you can see, the basic form factor is exactly the same. The camera rate is exactly the same. 600 nits brightness is the same brightness as the other iPad Pro. The main difference here is the camera layout is exactly like the iPhone 11. You're not going to get that third camera like the iPhone 11 Pro. And honestly, the rear camera of the iPad Pro in the last generation model also does 4K 60 frames a second. So there's no actual difference. Yes, there is a 10 megapixel ultra-wide camera. People love the ultra-wide cameras. I have one in my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and I use that 0.5 zoom all the time when the 1x zoom just doesn't work. So it is useful. Now, the LiDAR scanner is one of the main features, how it uses to determine distance, and it uses time of flight measure reflected light from up to 5 meters away. So you're going to get better low light photos up close, and that could be a big deal. And a lot of people do use their iPads as photography. So it's a nice thing to see. Samsung definitely needs to get on the ball with their cameras, as I feel they're behind on their tablets. But yeah, you can do all this from the last generation iPad. So I consider this iPad to be kind of a refresh, kind of like we see with the Surface Pro 6 and the 7, even though the 7 does have a little bit of an advantage. But this is where things get a little bit interesting. So the Magic Keyboard will actually give you more adjustable angles, and sneakily adds in a second USB-C port, so you don't have to use dongles, quite like this one we have right here, which is an RCA adapter. Has a couple USB-A ports. It has a USB-C for charging pass-through, an SD card reader, an HDMI port, an Ethernet port. And yeah, normally you have to use adapters like this in order to get multiple ports. So for the first time on an iPad, they let you natively get a USB-C port. However, one thing I find interesting on the Surface Pro 7 is that not only do you have a connector right here, which they won't seem to get rid of, and I actually like the dock. I just wish they would update it. But you also have a USB-C and a legacy USB-A adapter for connecting legacy peripherals, including headsets and even other dongles. So going back onto this, you can see that the Magic Keyboard does retail for $300. And honestly, for that price, for the $300 price point, my recommendation is getting actual protection on an OtterBox case, which is $129. Yes, I do have the second generation Apple Pencil. That remains unchanged. And you can see just exactly how it folds out. So it finally has custom angles. And it's something that the smart cover case is needed for a long time. But the big thing about the case finally comes up with the Surface Pro keyboard, as those keyboards sucked. And they finally realized that because the Surface type cover has been miles ahead of the iPad cover for years now. And I own the first generation Apple type cover and quickly went to an OtterBox case. But this actually has like real keys. I imagine this will probably be better than some laptops, and this is why Apple's charging an extra $100 on the case. But especially on the 12.9 inch, it's a full-size keyboard. I imagine on the 11 inch, it's going to be a little bit more cramped. But on the 12.9 inch, you're going to get a decent typing experience, much like the Surface Pro 7. And finally, the trackpad finally has a legit space. And as you can see by the Surface Pro 7 type cover, you can see that the trackpad basically comes in line with the Surface type cover. So finally, you're getting that type of support. And I imagine over the next couple of months, you're probably going to see third-party support. I know Logitech and Brydge have already had great keyboards. So are you going to really want to pay $300 when there's starting to be third-party cases that actually give you USB support? I've actually seen a couple of projects on Indiegogo. And the trackpad for iOS appears when you need it. But you know what? You can always just use a stylus. So I don't know exactly how it's going to be. I mean, the type cover does look really good. But again, there are alternatives at a fraction of the price. And a lot of the other stuff just isn't, new. One of the things that is nice, however, is Wi-Fi 6 finally comes to the iPad. So if you really need that lightning fast speed that you can't get on Wi-Fi 5, there you go. Also, they did not jack up the price for the iPad Pro 4th generation. As you can see, the 11.9 inch is still $799, and the 12.9 inch is still $999. Obviously, their trade-in program is still pretty crap because the iPads only give you $240, even if you have a 1 terabyte version. If you have an iPad Air, for these prices, it ain't worth trading in. The MacBook Pro can give up to $2,000. These trade-in values know that they're going to rip you off. But if you fully max out the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, we're talking $1,649. That's the exact same price as the last generation. And for the 11-inch, it's $1,449 for the cellular. So if you're used to the prices on the most recent iPad Pro, they have not gone up in price. So my recommendation is if you have not upgraded to the 3rd generation iPad Pro, or even the 2nd generation iPad Pro, it's a definite upgrade. The 2nd generation iPad Pro does have a little bit of a speed boost. The biggest factor from upgrading to a 2nd to a 3rd generation, which I obviously have done, is this USB-C port, which is amazing for everything compared to a Lightning connector, which I can't wait until they get rid of it from iPhones, as Samsung devices have had USB-C for years, including on the Samsung Galaxy Tab S3. So that shows that the technology is there, and Apple's finally catching up. But in order for iOS to finally take over, they need to put Mac. They need to put Mac on actual iPads. iPadOS is a big step forward, but until the iPad actually supports full-blown PC applications, much like a Mac does, there's still going to be a reason to buy a Surface in 2020, much like I have, because, let's face it, the Surface Pro can still do far more than an iPad can. It's still got the same visuals, but can it play Path of Exile? No. Can it run Steam? Absolutely not. Can it run Battle.net? No. Can it run all types of applications like an iPad can? No. Can you run full-blown Photoshop on an iPad? No. It does work on iPad, but it's not the same experience as on a Surface. So, again, there's still going to be a reason to buy a Surface in 2020. I'm not knocking the iPad because it's my favorite tablet computer of all time. I use it all the time for playing games, and I wish that Microsoft would actually put in its own like mobile service, or actually supported the mobile ecosystem a little bit better, or give native support for games. But until that comes along, there's still a huge reason to buy an iPad. Now, again, if you have a third generation iPad Pro, unless cameras mean something to you, you're going to be fine with the last generation model. It's not a speed boost significantly. The biggest refresh of the 2020 iPad is Wi-Fi 6 and also the one extra core processor and the cameras. But do cameras make an iPad? No. You could pull out your phone and get fake 100x zoom all the way, or you could get the iPhone 11 zoom. We'll have to see when it actually comes out in the wild, but hopefully this video helps you make up a decision between the iPad Pro 3rd generation, the new 2020 iPad Pro, and keep in mind that type case also works on the 2018 iPad Pro. So yeah, if you own the same iPad I do, don't upgrade. If you have the 2nd gen, consider an upgrade. If you have the 1st gen, definitely get the upgrade. Thank you for watching, and hope you guys like this tech review video. It's not actually unboxing or showing off something, but it needs to be said. Have a wonderful day.